Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Too High Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Galina, alongside my co-host, as always, Diante Lee. D, what's going on? It was Halloween. I fell asleep at like 10:55 Saturday night on Halloween because I'm an old man. You trick-or-treated, I guess, with your son?
I did. We went as a fire truck and the fire truck's dad. So that was a Halloween combination that we had.
That's nice to hear. What were we talking about in terms of a fire truck costume? He was it was like a transformer type thing, or just like
basically
fire truck?
like it was like the little overall straps kind of, and then it was a fire truck basically built on the outside of that and a fire hat. And then, I kind of tried to dress him up as like the prototypical firefighter. So the camo shorts or the camo shirt with the cargo pants, that was kind of the look we were going for.
What was the candy intake?
It was actually pretty good based on, we only really walked our street because it's we have a lot of Grinches and Grouches for the holidays here. I guess everybody's kids are growing up in my neighborhood, so there's not really as much holiday spirit. But it's a lot of chocolate, a lot of like lemon heads and stuff like that. And unfortunately, Braxton's probably not going to see more than a quarter of it because that's about to get distributed around the rest of the house for the family.
Do you have a favorite Halloween costume that you went as at some point?
I was a Power Ranger as a kid. That was a really big deal for me.
What color?
Blue.
Okay. I don't remember the blue guy very much, but yeah, that's a power move, I think.
Yeah. As a kid, absolutely, man.
One of the things that's different about, I'm sure, trick-or-treating in San Diego versus trick-or-treating in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, is that no matter what your costume was, once you went out trick-or-treating, no one could see your costume because my mom would make me put on like 15 sweatshirts because it's cold here October 31st.
Yeah.
So you're getting like, I'm going as like a doctor or something. I'm going as a fireman or whatever, and then here come 17 sweatshirts and a jacket so that I can be outside for more than an hour. Right. And it doesn't go over very well. I went as Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's one time. I think that's my number one costume. Just a way for me to get into women's clothes. All right, let's get into football right now. We just had a big trade just before we started recording this. Von Miller to the Los Angeles Rams. Quickly, your thoughts.
It makes a lot of sense given the timeline that the Rams are working off of. I think that our pal Nate Tice was the one who put out this tweet, and this was maybe 2019 or early 2020, basically just detailing that like once they made the trade for Jalen Ramsey, that you can only go more all in from there, right? Like you can't make any half measures. It makes a lot of sense. You don't trade for Matt Stafford to think about, what it's going to be like 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So I just like it in terms of, hey, if you know that this is where you're at and it looks like they have a legitimate chance to be the best team in the NFL, I don't even know if you could really say that edge rushing is a particular hole for them. I thought that they've been able to intimate some kind of edge pass rush pretty well with what they have in the stable. But to say like that you just want to lean all the way into making a strength a super strength, I respect that. And I think that, it makes sense again, given their timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the way to go. And the whole point is to win a championship. I think we always our brains get a little fried here when we start talking about, dynasties and stuff like that. And we always compare people to the Patriots. Like, dude, like you're not going to win 6 Super Bowls in 18 years or however much it was, 20 years. So like the goal is to win one. Like the goal is, and we kind of said that I said that a couple weeks ago when Orgeron got fired. The goal is to win one championship. Then you kind of go from there. Like the whole goal is to win one. And that's what the Rams are doing. And if they can get it done because they've traded everything else, every other future pick and future asset, then I'm super on board with this. So, yeah, I think this is a good move for them. He obviously makes them better. Right. There's no doubt. Even though, like you said, it's not like edge rushing has been a hole for them, but this guy is a Hall of Famer.
Right. Yeah,
so
you
go
not?
Why not, right? Like you're playing for this year and maybe next year. And then you're going to have to blow it up anyways. And then, whatever. Like, everyone else has to blow it up, but you have at least given yourself a chance. Dude, the Dolphins are going to have to blow it up after this year.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
they're not even
That's been my
close to winning a
point.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, like I've been trying to bat away all of the criticism on social media for like the last couple of hours, and that's my thing. Like, people have brought up, teams like the Steelers, the Ravens, and the Patriots, and I'm like, hey guys, I want you to understand what you're bringing up when you mention that. Like, you're talking about having the greatest combination of head coach and quarterback ever, or with the Steelers and Ravens having two teams that basically never trade picks because they have the best draft and development strategy that exists in the NFL. That's rare. Like, we cannot. I understand. Like, sometimes greatness can warp everybody's idea
that's
of what
what I'm
a
saying.
good process is, but good process sometimes is saying, hey, the easiest way to get an opportunity to win a championship is to go get the greatest players. And whatever mechanism it is that's required to get the greatest players is probably the best idea for these teams. And the second thing, and you were kind of hinting at it, is that the idea of a window doesn't really exist outside of Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and New England. Like, those are the only three teams we can say year over year has had an open window. And like I detailed, like that, they have rare mechanisms to be able to retain, acquire, and develop really good players in a way that's not super cost prohibitive. And we're seeing it with the Patriots now. Like, now it's time. They have to pivot. At some point, the bill's going to come due. If you have an opportunity to go get that one title, because you're only ever guaranteed, if you're contending in that season, that is the only season that you can guarantee yourself contention in. You have to go all in if the opportunity exists, because it's just too hard to get back to this point. There are so many teams that are middling. Like, eventually, we're going to have this conversation about the Cleveland Browns. And if they don't go all in when they have opportunities to do so, then you end up with an expensive middling roster, well, then you did all this for nothing, right? So I'm never not going to advocate for the idea of leaning into trying to go get as many wins and get as close to a title as you possibly can. Because the NFL is built to reward you for that. There are ways to make the cap mechanisms work around trying to chase a title, even if it becomes painful down the road. You deal with that pain when you get there, and chances are, once that pain comes around, you're probably getting fired anyways. And if you know you're getting hired to get fired, go try to win a championship before you get fired.
I think this is something that happens already in other sports. Maybe you can talk on the NBA, but I can tell you that the NHL, once it's like NHL trade deadlines, it's kind of a little softer in recent years, but there was like 15-year period when I was growing up where you would go and give up a first-round pick for a player that was going to give you 15 regular season games to end the season and then a playoff push. Like,
right.
I feel like this is so normal in other leagues to give up these picks for this one chance of winning a Super Bowl. So I think what the Rams are doing is perfect. I mean, the NHL trade deadline has been crazy for years because of this exact thing, where it's like people are giving up these high picks for rental players just for dude. Sometimes you get these guys for 30 games, something like that. It happened to Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky got traded to the Blues for 25 games or whatever it was. So, yeah, like this happens in other sports. Again, I can only speak for hockey, but I'm glad to see it's happening at football slowly because it makes everything more entertaining. And who doesn't want to see Von Miller on a playoff team this year?
Next to Aaron Donald. Like, can we all just put everything else aside for a second and just appreciate the fact that for at least the next 3 months, we get to see Aaron Donald and Von Miller lined up on the same defensive line. You would not see that outside of a Pro Bowl in any other context. I want to be able to enjoy that. I enjoy good players, and I want to see good players play together. It's as simple as that.
That's a hot take. Deontay Lee enjoys good players. Put that on a quote graphic. All right, before we get into what we want to talk about today, just a reminder that Too High is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is a premium collegiate clothing brand out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Home Field is in the middle of big new Saturday Season 2, where they launch a new school collection every Saturday at 12 Eastern for 16 straight weeks. USF, Georgia Tech, LSU, North Carolina, USC, everyone that you want is there. So go on homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code PFF for 50% off your first purchase. Again, homefieldapparel.com, promo code PFF for 15% off your first purchase. Longtime listeners will be upset today because unfortunately there's no Manscaped ad read, so I get to save myself for a week. All right, speaking of college football, let's get into it because we talked about it last week. It's a big week. It was going to be a big week in the Big Ten, kind of like the Big Ten East semifinal games to a certain degree. Penn State versus Ohio State and Michigan versus Michigan State. Michigan State wins. Ohio State wins. They will do battle in a few weeks, really to decide who goes to Indianapolis to play against. I don't know, to play against Minnesota. I guess.
If we're having the honest way to say that is that those two teams are playing for who gets to be the Big Ten champion.
That's 100% what it is at this point, because now Iowa's lost a couple of games. 2 straight, Purdue and Wisconsin. Yeah, Minnesota's. I'm pretty sure Minnesota's in the front runner, which is crazy to me, considering how they've kind of looked shaky. But let's stick on the games that just happened, the 2 big ones. Where do you want to start? You want to start Ohio State? You want to start Michigan State? What do you want to do?
Let's do Michigan State first, since that was an earlier game.
All right, go right ahead, sir.
I mean, my first thing was, and I think that we both agreed with this, is that was a game that Michigan found a way to lose, more so than Michigan State found a way to win. Outside of the explosive runs basically made up all of Michigan State's offense. And, I mean, Kenneth Walker's been an amazing running back. So it's not to take away from who he is as a player. And some of the stuff they did schematically was nice, like the way that they were setting up their zone scheme to kind of cut out some of Michigan's defenders. Like they had some like slip plays where a tackle or guard will kind of come underneath and then up the field of another tackle or guard or a center to be able to get to, a second level defender and things like that. That was a nice little wrinkle. But a lot of it is basically just Kenneth Walker being able to create after the line of scrimmage. So I didn't walk away from it thinking like, wow, Michigan State played Michigan evenly and they edged them, as much as I think Michigan just missed some opportunities to put the game away in the second half. But the one thing that I will say, and this is something that I think I'm interested in digging deeper into, is talking about like Josh Gaddis and a lot of like just the saving tree offensively. I think we spent a lot of time talking about what the defensive coaches who have come through Alabama and what they look like at different places. But when I look at like Gaddis and then you compare him to like a Kiffin and a Loxley and all these other guys who have spaced out, across college football, the one thing I see with them when their offenses are really humming is that it's probably the best offense in terms of spacing in the passing game that exists in college football. Like it was just snap after snap, and it helps having a good quarterback right now, which Michigan does. But they get guys crossing the field. You get a guy up a sideline. You get some kind of check down, whether it's a shallow cross or an over-the-ball route. And it's something that you see more on the pro level where you're asking quarterbacks to work through those progressions. But they've done such a good job of being able to tie together all these high-lows and middle of field open and middle field close beaters. And if you have a quarterback that knows how to process this kind of stuff, you get really, really efficient quarterback play. And they've had it this year, and I think that it was near, if not at its best, against Michigan State. It just so happened to not be enough to win that game.
Yeah, I thought McNamara I think everyone thought McNamara played his best game of the season. And we said it last week. We thought he was so much better than some of the quarterbacks they've had in the past, and that's why they were undefeated going into the game and had produced a pretty good offense. And he was even better. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like we go back to this whole thing. It's like it's not an easy offense. So I can get why some quarterbacks can come in there, Joe Milton, Shea Patterson, mm-hmm. and just have some issues because it's not just be a super athlete, have a huge arm and right. do all that stuff. I mean, there's tough, right? You got a lot of different personnel groupings you're dealing with, which means once you want to throw the football, you're going to have to really look at the matchups that you like or don't like. Yep. And then you're going to have routes over the middle of the field, which are always more difficult. And like you said, all these high lows.
It's a lot of anticipation throws. It's a lot of anticipation throws. Even the throw that was intercepted to end the game, basically, it was the right decision. It just happened to not be the best placement. But you have to anticipate those kinds of throws coming open in order to place them properly. And if you don't, those are the kinds of results you get, which to your point, is why a quarterback that does not have either the arm talent to fit things into tight windows or the processing ability to be able to find where routes are going to break open based on the coverage shell before it even happens, you're going to struggle. But McNamara has obviously been at a very high level. And if they would have had any semblance of a run game, they probably win this game by like 2 or 3 possessions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I'll talk about that last play because I was texting with one of my friends who's a big Michigan fan, and he thinks he should have. I think he thinks the route design was supposed to be to throw it to the flat. Like they're supposed to get the pick, throw it outside. I'm kind of in between that because I do think that once the guy who's covering the number 3, the innermost slot, runs right away, you can just throw that slant. Like that's kind of like it can be an inside out read. Now, if they told him on the sideline, hey, just play it like throw it like a pick, like read it out like a pick,
right?
Then definitely. But if they just told him to read it out normally, then I think that is the read. Well, I guess in a sense we'll never know. But so I can see it going either way, and they're close on it. I mean, I don't think that the receiver is going to set a pick. I think it works out that way, which is why the flat route is open. But right. I don't think he's going to set a pick, and then once he gets bumped, the ball's already gone.
And I mean, really, the only reason why it's intercepted, in my opinion, is because the route's coming up the sideline, so there's just not a lot of space to fit the ball in terms of placement away from coverage defenders. Like, to me, if you're going to have the best argument to me for another throw to make, if it's not the flat route, would have been the dig on the backside.
Yeah.
Because they happen to drain out all the coverage in the middle of the field. But again, I mean, late game situation, and like you said, if you're just trying to read out the progression, I'm not mad at any one of those throwing options. It just so happened that this is the one that got intercepted.
And you talk about like throwing a dig. McNamara was awesome.
Yes.
Throwing across the middle of the field against man covers, anticipation, and stuff like that. And I look, just to get back to the original point, like I agree with you. I thought Michigan was the better team. I thought Michigan was absolutely the better team. I thought that, when you look at the way Kenneth Walker was able to get his runs, there was a lot of him being bottled up and then him being a fucking baller and then going to make a play. There's even that long run on outside zone where they hit it front side. I think one of the Michigan defenders like kind of backdoors the tackle and gets in the backfield and then can't make a play. Kenneth Walker wins that one-on-one and then he's down the field. There's a little bit of a hold on the linebacker coming out trying to scrape over top. A little bit of a hold. That kind of opened up the hole and he's gone. But then, the first touchdown in the backfield, they have him. He squirts out on the backside and then, he's a ball. So that's what's going to happen. But I thought they controlled the line of scrimmage as well as so like Michigan State had been winning because they were controlling on offense. They were the better team in the trenches, and on defense they were the better team in the trenches. And I thought Michigan's D-line was able to dominate. I shouldn't say dominate, but they were able to get a ton of pressure. They have the strip sack that probably should have been that was as close to being a touchdown or down as you can find. Mm-hmm. And, Aiden Hutchinson was unblockable in the whole game, and I thought they were pretty good against the run too. And then on offense, that they couldn't and then, we flip it over and look at Michigan's offensive line versus Michigan State defensive line. Michigan State's defensive line had been very good going into this game, and Michigan State they didn't allow a lot of pressure. They won, they neutralized and created a lot of clean pockets for Cade McNamara.
I mean, there were some snaps where Michigan State was trying to run hot pressure where you're sitting 6 and playing cover 3, and they had it picked up. Completely picked up.
And then McNamara underthrows on that play.
Yep.
I remember that. There's one at least that I'm thinking of where they have the dig over the middle.
We're thinking over the exact same play.
And he's running. I mean, look, Michigan still scored a bunch of points, but that was a great pickup by them against a 6-man pressure, zone 6-man pressure, the hot coverage that we talked about on this podcast before. So, yeah, I thought that was really – and that is the kind of the issue that I have going forward because you can't play like this and beat Ohio State.
No.
So let's move over to Ohio State, Penn State. This is – so I'm an idiot, as people who listen to the podcast who know me know this already. But I, for some reason, picked Ohio State like minus 18.5 on our – college football preview show that we do here every Friday. I don't know why I thought this way. No, I love Ohio State's offense. They're blowing everyone out. But I also know that Penn State's defense always gives this team trouble. And trouble meaning they'll hold them to like 30 points like they did.
Instead of 60. Like they put up on everybody else in the Big Ten.
So, and one of the reasons why, and I was talking this with one of our friends, Sports Illustrated and ESPN, SEC Networks, Richard Johnson, was because Penn State doesn't play a Big Ten defense. You know, we've talked about this Big Ten style of defense where you're playing a lot of zone quarters. When you're spinning down, you're playing a soft cover 3. You're not blitzing a lot. You're not playing a lot of man. Well, guess what Penn State does? And they do it because they recruit as probably the second highest clip on defense in the Big Ten, but they can play man. They can blitz the heck out of you. They can play fire zone cover 3, meaning they're going to blitz 5 and play cover 3 zone behind it. They can do all that stuff, and that's so different than what Ohio State faces for the rest of the year, where they can just hammer you. Did you see that playing out kind of in Saturday night's game?
Yeah, I think that, well, number one, like when you look at Ohio State, the one thing that I always notice is the kind of bind that they put you in because of how good they are up front and with running the ball. So for any other team, if they tried to do what Penn State did, they would get absolutely boat raced on the outside. But they do such a good job when they have to play single high to stop the run of being able to take away those rhythm throws. Like one of the things that we've talked about, I think it was last week actually, the last Monday podcast or Tuesday podcast, was how good Ohio State is at throwing like those field outs, the curl routes, these hitches, like all of these free access throws that you would get against like any other soft zone team. Penn State has the corners, they have the safeties, and to me, most importantly, they have the defensive line that can affect the pocket well enough to take away some of those rhythm throws. So that to me was a really big piece of them being able to stay or keep Ohio State off of schedule. Aside from the fact that because they were playing more middle of field close coverage, more single high stuff, they were able to stop the run pretty well throughout the night. Like there really wasn't as many explosive runs as what you would typically expect to see from an Ohio State offense against a lot of these Big Ten defenses. So for that reason, I thought that they were able to take away some of the stuff that Ohio State is just able to march down the field with. Now, what I will say, to credit Ohio State with, and this is one thing that they do every week, I think I messaged you about this before we got on, is that like they are the best in-breaking route throwing team that I've seen in college football. Like they always have an answer, and that's the reason why they were able to win, is because they're so talented that they're able to get these answers. But what Penn State did was basically shrink the entire game to the point where that was all that was available to Ohio State. They just so happen to have good enough players to be able to make do, even if that's what you're doing as a defense. But yeah, nobody else in the Big Ten outside of maybe Michigan, when Michigan's at its peak, could do what Penn State did on Saturday.
Yeah, I had talked about how good the Ohio State offensive line had been going into this game, and it was a battle. I'm not saying they won or lost. I'm just saying it was a battle. It wasn't like they were just pushing everyone. The Penn State defensive line was doing some good stuff, and they'll come after you with interesting blitzes. Like Brent Pry is always coming up with something different, dropping guys off, blitzing people from weird angles, moving the safeties. One of the things I thought that was really interesting was I think they played into maybe C.J. Stroud's still early in his career, how he processes, where we were talking before the show about how Penn State was playing their safety, and he was leaning hard in one direction or another. And I think it was, they told him, when we're in cover 1 or even when we're in cover 3, you are going to open and start moving to where C.J. Stroud looks first. And we're going to live in a world where we think we can get to the quarterback, or C.J. Stroud is just not going to work to his backside progressions. So we don't need you back there. High risk, but I think in this game for most of it was high reward. And that's something that you can just do when you feel like you can get after the quarterback. Now, if you're going to rush 4, you're not going to play any line games, which, again, Penn State, a lot of stunts, a lot of blitzes. If you don't feel like you can get after the quarterback that way, then no, you're probably not doing that. But they worked it out because they could get after the quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, to that point, I think I said that I think that that's a big reason why Chris Olave probably did not have the kind of breakout that you would expect to see considering the fact that they were playing a lot of single high. So you thinking that you're getting these one-on-one matchups on the outside, and that's what you want to take. But because they were leaning so hard in the way that Stroud was looking in his first look on his progression, which I think was often towards Olave, they're kind of cutting off the field. And again, to your point, that's really only something you can do if you trust that backside corner with your life, because that's a lot of strain. There's a lot of strain to put on the backside of the coverage. And yeah, I think that Stroud still has a little bit of development to do in terms of being able to work through a complete progression. One thing I will say that I thought they did a better job of in the second half, they kind of started condensing their splits. They played with some heavier personnel. It wasn't as much four open, and that was able to manufacture some space, especially across the middle of the field. In the second and third quarters when they really were able to kind of take back control of the game. But it took a while for them to get that answer because Penn State was able to do such a good job of squeezing out all these window throws that Ohio State likes to take advantage of.
So I'll give you guys the numbers before we flip to the other side of the ball. Penn State this season above Big Ten average in cover one rate, blitz rate, stunt rate, as in line movement rate, and cover three rate. So that's again very different than what Ohio State usually faces in the Big Ten. All right,
so defense, man.
It's close. It's close to a pro defense. I think so.
Yeah.
So let's move to the other side of the ball. You said you saw some things that Penn State did offensively, trying to mimic what Oregon and Joe Moorhead did when they beat Ohio State earlier in the season.
Yeah, a lot of it was setting up formationally in a way that tries to put Ohio State in a bind. I will say, and this is something that I've kind of scoffed at over the last couple of weeks, which is, the idea of how much more split safety stuff that Ohio State was playing, because a lot of it really is like on third and obvious and second and obvious. But I do think that because they knew that Sean Clifford could actually pass as an experienced Big Ten quarterback, that they leaned on that a little bit more, and I thought they were better prepared for it. But you could definitely see a lot of Penn State trying to get into, that nub trip. So you got a tight end on one side, three receivers on the opposite, and they're in the shotgun. And what you're trying to do basically is bend a defense into having to make a decision between what they are going to defend against. Are you going to defend against the run or play towards the tight end side, or are you going to play the pass and send more of your numbers to the passing strength side, to the trip side? And because they were playing a little bit more of the cover 4 and cover 2 stuff, I thought they did a decent job of finding that midpoint. But you could see there were still some opportunities that I think Clifford just missed in working to like the tight end running back side and the passing progression. And even with that, I thought he had a pretty good game against Ohio State in coverage. And I thought they called some pretty good concepts to create stress on what Ohio State was doing in coverage.
Good. Perfect. I have nothing else to add, so we're good. That's kind of what I saw when I was watching the game live. So what do you think, Ohio State, Michigan State? You think there's any? What is Michigan State? I mean, we'll talk about this probably more in depth when the time is right. But you think, what does Michigan State got to do to win this one later? I mean, Michigan State might lose the game between then, but
I was going to say, I mean, there's no guarantee that they're still undefeated by the time they get to that game. I mean, if I'm looking at pathway to victory, it would have to be what they did to Michigan, which is like the getting explosive runs. I mean, that's been their offense all year long, and I don't think it's going to be any different. Between now and then. And defensively, like, if you can get pressure on Michigan up front, Ohio State might have the best offensive line in the country. I don't know exactly what it is that you're going to do against them. And they have better receivers as well. So I don't want to say it's a boat race. I don't want to, say something inflammatory to Michigan State fans. Well, this is probably about as good as they felt since Narduzzi was there. But I can't see it. I just don't see it unless they have another lights out day on the ground.
Mel Tucker played. I don't know if he's a play caller there, but anyways, it's his defense. They played a lot of one high, a lot of like roll that safety deep, get the other one in the box, whether it was cover 3 or cover 1 to deal with Michigan's run game. Mm-hmm. Michigan doesn't have receivers, right? Ronnie Bell out for the season. The freshman kid obviously played really well, but they didn't expect that to happen. I don't know if you just can't do that against Ohio State. They will absolutely kill you, because then it goes back to the same thing. Like, how are you going to play on the outside? You going to play press? You're cooked down the field. Like, do you want to take that chance because they will hit a couple of them and those are explosive plays? Or do you want to play off and give them the access route to the sideline, which they have more than willing to take? And then if you play too high, then they're going to run the ball outside zone from pistol, and they're gonna get after you. I just wonder, you're going to have to find some way to kind of balance that out. But I don't know if they can play. Certainly, they can't play the amount of one high, whether it was cover 1 or cover 3, against Ohio State like they did against Michigan.
Right.
All right, let's pivot to the NFL. And just so you guys know, right now you can get 25% off any PFF subscription if you use promo code TWOHIGH, TWOHIGH. Grades and data are live for every single player who logged a snap last week. Go check out the highest graded players from week 9. You can even check out the highest graded players from college football after week 10, I think we are. What can you get with a PFF subscription? All of PFF's locked article content, PFF's NFL and college football betting dashboards are great powered projections, cover probabilities, and betting values. 0 to 100 grades of every single player, including the top rookies on every team. Player prop tool, which shows positive and negative value for every NFL prop, and more. Support the pod and use promo code TWOHIGH, TWOHIGH, for 25% off any subscription. Okay. The Saints are the best team in the league. They are the best team in football history, I believe. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they lost their quarterback. Jameis Winston is out for the season. Trevor Siemian came in. I mean, they get the W, but he didn't do anything. Who are the guys you think they should go reach out for? Like, do you think Taysom Hill can go and start the next 15 games, including playoff games? Do you think they go out and trade for someone? Do you think they go out and sign someone off the street? Like, what do you think is going on there? And you think should happen in New Orleans?
Well, it's tough if they're not going to go trade for a guy. I can't imagine what other mechanisms you have outside of leaning on.
Well, signing Cam Newton would be the one.
I guess that is an option, but to me,
they said they're not going to do it. That's what I heard.
Exactly. I was like, if that was a real option and it would have happened already, I would like to see Cam Newton be signed. Even if
oh my god, Cam Newton and Sean Payton together is.
I would love that.
Amazing.
I would love that. I don't see it. Like I said, I think it would have happened already because there's really not any other option that's available right now that I think would even be able to that would help them at least tread water for the rest of the year, because they do have a very competitive team this year, a much more competitive team than I think either of us would have imagined 100%. That they'd have at this point in the season. So if it's not Cam, then I guess it's Taysom Hill, and then I guess I would have to ask you, as somebody who watches the Saints really closely, what the ceiling is for them offensively right now.
Well, I think with our friend Ben Solak tweeted that they should go and trade for Teddy Bridgewater. If this is the Broncos fire sale, then go trade for Teddy. He knows the offense. The thing is, I just feel like with how good the defense is playing, and we're going to talk about the defense a bit now, but with how good the defense is playing, I'm just like, give me a guy who can push the ball down the field, who's going to take chances and create explosive plays. Teddy's not that guy. I think there's a reason Taysom Hill didn't win the starting job, and it's because he has massive issues playing quarterback. But you obviously have this ability to create a better run game. Like, the Saints were already running the ball at as high a rate as you can possibly do on first and 10. So at least you put in Taysom Hill, you have some more diversity. You bring in. So what they were doing, what the Saints were doing leading up to this Bucs game was, Kamara was the only player who they could play at running back. They didn't like any of the other guys. They had that rookie, I think guy out of Notre Dame, I forgot his name. So when Alvin is in the game, his best run is outside zone. Well, when you had Latavius Murray or Mark Ingram, that's great. Put him a game, run outside zone, plus all the stuff he does in the passing game. Plus he can run other runs, but his best run is outside zone. So, okay, no problem, because we can go and put Mark in the game to run duo. We can put Latavius in the game to run duo. They didn't have that leading up to this Bucks game. That's why they trade for Mark Ingram, so they can have these downhill runs and kind of create some diversity. So that's step one. And I love Mark Ingram. Don't know if it's going to work out. He looked okay against the Buccaneers, so that's good. But now you can, if you're going to be a running football team anyways, well, maybe putting in Taysom Hill and having some more zone reads, some QB powers and stuff like that might, like if you're going to do it anyways, I don't think they should be as high as they are in terms of their run rate, especially on early downs. However, this is what Sean Payton is now. So if they're going to do it, might as well get in Taysom Hill and then run play action and have all these deep drops. Like he takes so much time in the pocket. He just doesn't see things fast enough. And it's like he doesn't see things fast enough, and his mechanics in terms of his hitches to get the ball off in time takes so much time that it's like a double whammy of him being late on a ton of throws. So
I think is exactly why anytime they had him throw when Breeze was there, it was always like some super deep play action, some guys running this 44-yard post type of thing where he has all the time in the world to take as many hitches and then just uncork the ball as deep as he could. And like you said, he's not really a progression thrower type.
And as you saw in the Giants game a few weeks ago, when they put him in to do exactly that, he's still late on the throw. Mm-hmm. And then that gets picked off, and that kind of changed the game. And the Saints should be 6-1 at this point, if not for that throw, to a certain degree. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I think you can win obviously with Taysom, and if there's any sort of progression of him from the pocket, then maybe they're really good. However, we want to talk about the defense, because the defense has done what a lot of teams can't do against Tom Brady, which is stop them. In 3 out of the 4 games that the Saints have played in the Tom Brady Tampa Bay era, Dennis Allen's defense has been lights out. Dennis Allen doesn't get his due. I mean, I'm biased, of course. Dennis Allen doesn't get his due. He's been a great defensive coordinator, and he's the one. So I wrote an article about how they stopped Tom Brady and the Bucs offense on Sunday afternoon. You can go on PFF.com. You can check it out. It'll be up there Tuesday morning. So by the time you're listening to this, you probably get it. So Dennis Allen, the Saints were 7-9 for a few years. And Dennis Allen was the defensive coordinator for a couple of those teams, I believe. But then once they started figuring things out, obviously get better players. The 2017 draft class is very good. But now, because they have a real defense under Dennis Allen, like the offense is always good, but because they have a real defense under Dennis Allen, those 7-9 seasons turn into 4 straight division titles, because the defense is not fucking the worst defense you've ever seen in your life. And we kind of talked about this last episode with Chuck. Like, that's what kind of the Chiefs are going through right now, the 7-9 Saints seasons. So, but one of the cool things about Dennis Allen was, everyone wants to talk about Brandon Staley coming off the Vic Fangio tree. Got to play too high. Got to do all that stuff. Dude, he's been doing that. Mm-hmm. He's always been a quarters guy. He's been doing that stuff. So it kind of sucks that he hasn't gotten his due, though. I love for him to stay in New Orleans for the rest of his career. However, last season, 3rd most amount of too high safety shells pre-snap, behind the Brandon Staley and Vic Fangio. This year, they're down to about 14th, because he's changed his defense, which I think is really cool. They don't play as much quarters anymore. Now, they did against the Packers, and they played some too high stuff against the Bucs, but they are a man coverage team. I was
going to say, I just think that they're healthier and better playing man than they were last year.
Yes, that's exactly it. And like, you have Marshawn Lattimore has become a great cornerback again. Yeah. And maybe he was always a good cornerback. Maybe the injuries were an issue, but he's been locked down, absolutely locked down this season. CJ in the slot is very good. You have the dynamic player in Malcolm Jenkins getting up there in age, but still understanding how to work himself into this defense. And then Marcus Williams in the post has been a great player. They've been getting away with Paulson Adebo, and then they bring in Bradley Roby. One of the Robies, to play the opposite corner. And so it's been really good, and the pass rush is getting better. Cam Jordan is not the same Cam Jordan he's been, and yet the defensive line has been very good. Demario Davis is the best linebacker in football, might be the best player in football right now. And they found Pete Warner in the draft, who's, Quan Alexander gets injured. He's healthy now, but they're still giving a lot of reps to Pete Warner, playing alongside Demario Davis. I think at will. I think they're putting Demario at Mike and Pete Warner at will. They've been great. Man coverage, man coverage, man coverage. So they go into this Bucs game saying, okay, we are a man coverage team. But the issue is, this is not the New England Patriots Tom Brady anymore. This is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are throwing the ball down the field with all those receivers. So he says, okay, I'm playing a lot of man coverage. What can I do between, kind of keeping them from getting down the field every snap, but also still playing man coverage? So he played a lot of cover two man, a few variations of cover two man. And it didn't work out. Chris Godwin, go watch the highlights, find all the Chris Godwin slants against Chauncey Gardner-Johnson with no one in the middle of the field. You know what? It's cover two man. There's no one in the middle of the field. You're going to get cooked. They cooked them. It is what it is. There was one snap against, so they said, okay, well, let's cover one blitz. Same thing. No one in the middle of the field. They protect it. They get Godwin on a slant, on a drag against a Chauncey, and he's going for yards. So they said, all right, never mind. First quarter, 2/3 of the snaps are in some sort of man coverage look. For the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, up until the Brady interception, they flipped it. 2/3 are in a zone coverage look. Let's protect the middle of the field. Now, Brady is going to score his points. He's Tom Brady. They have an unbelievable receiving cast. So, they were still playing a little bit too high and spinning down to cover 3 or something, or sometimes cover 1. But really, they were trying to protect the middle of the field a little bit more. You're going to get beat. Evans makes a great play on the corner route. They get beat for a touchdown, et cetera, et cetera. But the defense played well, so he keeps this cover 2 man in his back pocket for quarters 2, 3, and most of the fourth quarter. He brings it out, 2nd and 10. Brady doesn't see PJ Williams. They're playing cover 2 man. He gets the interception return for a touchdown. I love that Dennis Allen kept that play. He knew he would have to go back to it at some point. I mean, it is cover 2 man, so there's a chance they're going to go back to it anyways on a 2-minute drill type of situation. But I love that he kept it in his back pocket. He didn't go away from it, even though they were beating him with it in the first quarter. And they get the interception. PJ just standing there. I mean, you could. I don't know what Brady's looking at, to tell you the truth. But with that said, PJ is standing there in cover 2 man, and PJ Williams gets the interception return for a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of detailed all of it, so there's really not as much for me to add. But, like, the man versus zone splits thing was definitely, even without the data, it's very clear when you're watching the film. And this is something that, we've talked about, was just that Dennis Allen's just done a great job of taking away a lot of the underneath stuff that Brady likes. And he's done a good job, and this is something that we've talked about with, like, Staley and Fangio and all these elite defensive coordinators, which is just leaning into the thing that takes away what the offense wants to do and just doing it over and over and over again. And a lot of it is happening on the coverage end and less so on the pressure end. When you're dealing with the quarterback like Tom Brady, sending 5 and playing cover 1, like,
it's over.
Good luck. Yeah, good best of luck, especially with the receiver talent that he's working with right now. So yeah, I like the little bracket and 2-man looks. I did see. I mean, it's just tough. It's tough when you're outside leverage on a guy and that receiver is running slants from an already condensed split. It's really hard to cover that if you don't have any body presence in the middle of the field. And then going to cover 1 to take that away, and then just being able to live with the fact that you've got an elite corner on the outside. When you're able to do that in rush 4, you're in a really good spot. And one of the things that they did that I really liked was the ability to mix up whether or not you were dropping 8 or rushing 4 when you're making some of these calls, and the ability to do that and chipping tight ends and getting defensive ends that are lined up outside of these slots that have really tight splits, and they're actually playing them in man-to-man coverage. That was a really impressive little wrinkle as well. Trying to force Brady, if he wants to throw the ball down the field, to throw it into tighter windows that is being dictated to him, instead of just saying, hey, we'll play a very soft cover 2 or a very soft cover 3 and just let you dump it off and eat us up with 4, 5, 6 yards after catch on all these snaps. Being able to still play tight coverage and then mixing up what you're doing with your tight coverage in order to try to dictate where the ball can and cannot go. that's been something that Dennis Allen has been really good with this year. And to your point, it's something that's not necessarily a complete deviation, but something that they're doing much more of now in 2021 than they were doing last year, or even in 2019 when they were also a really good defense.
Yeah, and it's like, the first Packers game of the year when they beat the shit out of the Packers in Jacksonville, it felt like a regular old Dennis Allen defense. And then since that point, it's just man. Like, they just play man all the time, and they've been really, really good in it. So I'm excited. I think this is a really, like you said, I think it's a better Saints team than both of us thought it would be. They're getting Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland don't miss. They just keep finding guys who can play right away. It's crazy. Giving up all the draft picks doesn't matter. They keep picking good players, so they're so good. They're getting Onyemata back. I don't know if we'll ever see Michael Thomas in the Saints jersey again, to tell you the truth, which really sucks because they need him badly on offense.
Yes,
badly. But hopefully, maybe they'll trade for like Brandon Cooks or something like that. Like, just bring the band back together because they need any sort of receiver option there. It's bad. It's really bad right now. Just to help whoever's going to play quarterback for them. Okay. Whether it's football success or financial savvy, the right questions help set the stage for winning strategies. Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to share insights that can help put you ahead on both your fantasy and financial scoreboards. Want to hear about Chris's old playing days or behind the scenes with Al on Sunday Night Football? How about a need to know for your financial future? Now you can ask about either or both. And every football or financial question you ask earns you a chance to win a catered party for February's big game. Check out the Chris Collinsworth podcast and Western and Southern's Instagram for answers to the best questions each week. Submit your questions at westernsouthern.com/askchris. One more time, that is westernsouthern.com/askchris. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description below. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. All right, let's finish off with two quarterbacks we want to talk about. First, the Patriots go into Los Angeles and get to win against Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. Couple shaky weeks back-to-back from Herbert. What did you see from the Patriots defense against the Chargers?
What I saw from them was a lot of like cover three, which is the same kind of thing that they did against the Buccaneers. And that's just something that I'm noticing about them. Anytime they're playing a high level of quarterback, they'll just play more soft zone and take away the explosives. And the reason why, to me, it really worked and forced Herbert to have to be better than, what he was on Sunday is because I think that Bill Belichick had a really good understanding of the fact that they could not, the Chargers could not hurt the Patriots defense out of the same formations that they run and pass in, doing different things. Like, it's two different fastballs. Like, they don't have changeups. They basically have two different fastballs. And they were able to find success, the Chargers did, against the Patriots running outside zone and heavier personnel packages because they were creating these four-man surfaces with these multiple tight end looks and really stretching out the edge against an odd front team, so that way you're really you're setting up a new bubble. That's something that you would really like to do as an offense against an odd front team that's trying to take away B gaps, right? You want to create a new bubble, whether it's like in gap schemes or running power and counter out of two-back stuff, or doing what the Chargers did, which is stretching the edge out wide and then creating the C-gap area you can attack. But the Chargers don't pass out of those formations because they don't have a bunch of winning tight ends. So they have to be in more of a spread world. Well, they can't run when they're in more of a spread world because they need more bodies because they don't necessarily have winning offensive linemen in terms of one-on-one blocking situations. So because of that, the Patriots were basically able to gamble on the fact that the Chargers could not hurt them enough in the run game because they did not have enough of a play action element to their offense. And this is something that I'll mention Nate again that I've heard him talk about, both with us privately and on his own podcast, is the fact that they've always got to be in four open. So they always got to run quick game to get these efficient gains. This is something that you and I have talked about as well. They don't have enough efficient offense handing it off in order to be able to really break a team like the Patriots and get into some of the easier cover three beaters. that we see. So it's just like such high degree of difficulty because they're always either in 12 personnel or 13 personnel or something like that. And then when they've got to pass, they've got to be in complete like four open, almost like the Bills. So, or at least the early Bills, when we were talking about them basically being stuck as a spread only team. So that's just kind of the difficulty that I saw. And New England was able to take advantage of that by just setting up these softer zones and forcing Herbert to have to throw the ball underneath or in the tighter windows down the field. And he just didn't have enough success with that, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about having to kind of check the ball down to a certain degree. I find they cannot figure out a way to get people open down the field on shot plays.
No,
they just can't do it. And yeah, it's tough, man. So like, how you're not? We saw last year. Now, obviously, it's year two with Herbert. So I don't know. Teams have quote unquote figured him out. I don't think that's true. However, Anthony Lynn last year and oh my God, I forgot the name of the OC. Shane Steichen, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to get guys open down the field and then use Herbert like what you should be using Herbert. Use his arm, let him out the pocket, use his arm, stuff like that. And we're just not finding it. We've seen it 2 weeks in a row against Baltimore, and now not 2 weeks in a row, 2 games in a row against Baltimore and New England. And I thought Herbert was just a bit off in both games, accuracy-wise. So, they get the interception, it hits off Eckler's hands. Obviously, you'd want the ball a little lower. Not a bad throw, but he's just off by this much. And not that Eckler shouldn't make the catch, but like still, he was off in a few throws.
Yep.
So you end up with these situations where you're obviously behind the sticks a little more, and then New England. They did blitz him a little bit. I have here about 18% blitz rate in this game. I thought it was more, and they had blitzed. Remember, the Patriots had blitzed the shit out of Dak Prescott not that long ago, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. So I think just giving some looks, and even though they didn't end up sending pressure, I thought it panicked Herbert a little bit. And then that forced him down a little time. Sometimes forced him to check down. So when he maybe could have kept going through his progression and hit some bigger plays down the field. So I think just the illusion of pressure, which is something that Belichick has done to Herbert before. Last year, we thought they were going to blitz him. He was a young quarterback. All Belichick. He blitzed Tua. I don't know if you remember this. Last season they went back to back. So the Patriots played the Dolphins with Tua, and then they played the Chargers with Herbert. So he blitzed the shit out of Tua. And then it's like, oh my God, we got to prepare for this cover zero shit. Like they're going to blitz us. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then they don't do it at all against Herbert. So I think there's the same type of situation where it's like, we might show you some stuff, but we're not really coming with more than 4 that often. And it still gave Herbert a little bit of pause there. So I don't know if anyone's figured out Herbert after 2 weeks of being just okay. But something to look at, I think, if you're the Chargers offense, just kind of doing the stuff that you're saying. This offense is not great right now.
It's just not. Yeah, it's just not. They are trying to squeeze blood out of a rock a lot of times because there's just not enough. There's not enough of an explosive element to be able to open up the underneath stuff that they need. And I mean,
who runs the most quick game in the NFL?
It's them.
The fucking Los Angeles Chargers. Like, why?
They basically just took the Breeze offense and just dropped it right on the shoulders of Justin Herbert. And mentally, he's obviously able to work through the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he's not making poor decisions with throws. It's just like, man, it would be nice if there was some more layering to this offense instead of just asking this guy to have to win in the 5 to 12 yard range with his arm every time because there's nothing happening deeper than that he can get to. So, yeah, to that point, I mean, to me, priority number one for them is going to have to be finding either some kind of vertical threat as a receiver or fixing this run game at a heavier personnel so that way they can manufacture more stuff in the play-action game. Because you can't convince me that that's not a viable opportunity for them in growing Herbert's game as a quarterback because he has the arm talent and the mind to be able to work on, turning his back to the line of scrimmage, flipping it around, and still being able to process what he's seeing deep down the field.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think they got to figure some stuff out. Just get modern. Like, what do you? Like,
Yeah.
The funny thing about the Breeze offense that Mike Lombardi, who's the offensive coordinator, comes from in New Orleans is that to a certain degree, it's an antiquated. The Sean Payton and Breeze offense is to a certain degree an antiquated offense. And I always said this. It's like the Sean Payton, Drew Brees offense is the best version of like the West Coast offense. Well, no, you can't be running the West Coast offense anymore in the NFL. Like, that's craziness. It works because you have Drew Brees and Sean Payton, but it's clearly not working with Justin Herbert and Mike Lombardi. All right, last thing we want to talk about, Thursday night, big game. Last Thursday night, you have the Cardinals losing to the Packers, and we just want to talk about a bit about Kyler Murray. His back-to-back games where he's been okay after starting scintillatingly hot the first whatever it was 5 games of the season, 6 games of the season, whatever it was. Is there anything that you saw with the Packers defense that kind of gave them issues?
I mean, nothing structurally that really blew me away. The one thing that I will say that was kind of confusing is I just didn't think that there was a lot done to attack the middle of the field for Arizona. That was kind of a surprise to me because I felt like coming into the game, if there was a space to attack this Packers defense, that's it. They have not had great linebacker play for years now. You know, that has clearly been an area of stress on this defense, and I like what Green Bay has on the outside and on the perimeter. So if I were Arizona, I would have done more to attack the middle of the field. And, you know, I will give them credit. They did do a pretty good job of setting wide edges and crushing the pocket. And I know that it almost sounds a little like too simplistic, and we've talked about this before with Russell Wilson, but keeping a shorter quarterback stuck in the pocket and not allowing him to extend or get these really deep dropbacks, that does have an effect on the what kind of progression that quarterback is making and how much vision they have. But I expected to see a lot more over the middle of the field that just wasn't there, especially for a team in Green Bay that does not want to necessarily play a ton of man because they don't have great interior man defenders. Arizona did not take enough advantage, I think, of the intermediate game crossing the middle of the field. And I think that asking themselves, and this is, I think this is a part of the variance game as well. And I think eventually, I have Cincinnati on my radar as well for this. But teams that want to work the ball outside the numbers a whole bunch, like you are still playing a variance game. And sometimes you're going to have weeks where this is the regression that you'll see. So I'm interested to see, if they're able to get back into working the middle of the field and finding those matchups so you're not always trying to win one-on-one on the outside, which has been a big feature of this offense this year.
Yeah, and so the first thing, obviously, Hopkins goes down after he makes that big catch down the sideline. So obviously that allows Green Bay to feel more comfortable playing man. But they went into the game with a game plan that was going to say, we're going to play zone because, and we've talked about this a lot, like, you have a player like Kyler Murray, you have a player like Lamar Jackson, you have a player like Josh Allen. You don't want to play man because, well, they all have this top end receiver, and not the Ravens, but the Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins. You don't want to stay in cover one against them, but you need a way. So then you play zone because you're thinking, okay, well, that helps us on the receiver. Plus, it gets us eyes on the quarterback when he scrambles. But one of the things that teams have been trying to do against, especially the Josh Allens in Buffalo, is kind of take that intermediate level and push it back deeper, like 5 to 10 yards, so that you don't give up the big play and you force these quarterbacks to check the ball down, check the ball. They don't want to do that. Check the ball down, check the ball down, check the ball down. What I thought that was interesting about Green Bay was they were not doing that. They were allowing a lot of space between the linebacker level and the safety level. And like you said, they didn't take advantage of that. The Cardinals did not take advantage of that, and there were some routes there for them to take advantage of. And now this goes back into the whole thing, like you're saying. Well, sometimes a short quarterback's not going to see it. Like, that's just who he is. Now, Kyler Murray's a great quarterback. Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, but they're going to miss these type of throws. So you could give him that. Now, one of the things that Kyler Murray was so much better at this season was hitting that level of the field. Couldn't do it against the Packers, didn't see it against the Packers, and so you live in a high variance world like you're talking about. And sometimes they still had a chance to win the game at the end, though obviously I would imagine that if Aaron Rodgers had his full arsenal of receivers, they probably put up quite a few more points and don't give Arizona the chance, to have the last drive to go down the field and honestly probably should have won the game. But that was something to keep in mind going forward about this Cardinals offense, like you're talking about. They need to find other ways to be less high variance than they are. Okay, that's it.
That's it.
You good?
Yes, sir.
All right. See you guys later this week.